All right, take two. Hopefully Axel doesn't get all crazy now. Uh, Important video. Really, if you've been following any of my material ever over the last couple of years, and if you are wanting more insight about long-term ketogenic eating, or whether or not you're going to actually undertake keto as a lifestyle, or if you're thinking about doing the diet, you've done the diet, it hasn't worked for you, there's just so many ways we could discuss this ketogenic world, or even now, I consider it really almost the same thing in this carnivore world, although obviously it's not, because you can do a plant-based ketogenic diet, and I think that's what I did in the beginning, very successfully. I mean, still had a little bit of meat, but very plant heavy. I mean, very plant heavy. Lots of nuts, lots of oils, lots of butter, lots of avocado, lots of salads, and with tons of success. So I'm gonna just dive right in there right now. I'm gonna go right in. This is my 5 year later reflection video of ketogenic eating, my thoughts, my experiences, mostly my experiences, and what it means for the future. So if you followed any of my material very early on, where I kind of adopted my hashtag, the Keto Cairo, and I hope I'm still the only person using that, it was because the ketogenic diet did, in effect, really impact my life to the point that I go so far as to say save my life. And I really say that because I am very prone to having unstable blood sugar. It's not ever dangerously high that I've ever experienced. And what I mean is, I've worn a continued glucose monitor for I think 9 or 11 days before it fell off of what was going to be like a 14-day trial. And it was one of the best things I ever did, because I got to see that when I eat a candy bar, as an example, one Snickers for me puts my blood sugar right around 200, about 2 hours, postprandial, so post after, eating. That's too high for somebody like me. That's the reason why all this insulin, comes to combat this high blood sugar in my body, and my muscles and or fat, whatever, aren't utilizing it appropriately, and I become tired, lethargic, I put on weight very easy. I break out hives, pimples, energy levels, I get numbness and tingling in my feet, I get ridiculous bathroom habits in terms of frequent urination and irritable bowel. So there you go. If you're just tuning in now to this channel, that's a big part of my history and why I went keto, because no other type of diet and or Whole30 and or carbohydrate balance type of diet plan or nutrition plan ever really worked for me. The closest I ever came to feeling really good was doing a paleo diet with very modified amounts of carbohydrates and sweet potato. And that, by the way, even when I was keto, I would still have sweet potato in the allotted amount of grams of carbs a day, whatever that number is now, I can't even think. I mean, within that 10% of carbohydrates a day, they were coming strictly from sweet potato, because other than a little bit of fruit, berries post-workout, I didn't consume other carbohydrates. So anything that would be in the form of a carbohydrate would have been in the form of glycogen stores and from protein and protein breakdown, as opposed to doing legitimately 60 to 70% of my calories coming from predominantly fat sources. Let's just say this, it healed my gut. I had no irritable bowel during the time that I was on keto strict for nearly 2 years. I became the opposite of lactose intolerant, actually. I could drink milk. I could have cheese that I would have never been able to consume before. I basically fixed any and all remnants of things like leaky gut or symptoms like irritable bowel again. I mean, not the same thing, but feel me here. I had no gluten, no bread, and I did really well. I was probably about, if I had to guess, about 7 to 8% body fat. There is one picture of me online from a before and after. I don't know, if anyone really wants it shared, I mean, you can ask, but I have it somewhere in this Instagram feed on an IGTV. And I mean, I was really lean. Where I started having problems within the 2-year period was when I started to get frequent urination again, but it was a little bit different. It was more like a lot of pressure, just tons of pressure built up around the bladder and or ureters, in particular this right ureter. And after having every kind of scan and test you could think of at urologists, I mean, there was nothing to be seen. Nothing came up on blood work except for the fact that I had probably some severe dehydration, high creatinine levels, electrolytes, depletion, so to speak. That was at least what was told to me by the medical doctors was, you're really dehydrated, drink some more fluids, make sure you're staying hydrated, stop doing so much coffee, those kinds of things. And lo and behold, when I started incorporating a little bit more carbohydrates into my diet, I started to have less symptoms in the bladder, which is, counterintuitive to my thinking because, it was the carbohydrates and the high blood glucose that gave me those, pre-diabetic symptoms years ago. But in actuality, it's kind of like that find balance. And the video synopsis here is not finding balance in your diet. The video is say you are like me and don't do well with carbohydrates. Like I said, I break out with too many carbohydrates. Certain carbohydrates, I mean, it's very instant. I could fall asleep in the snap of a finger. Blood sugar fluctuations, insulin problems, all these hormonal imbalances. There's probably some thyroid, things going on with that as well. And I'm, far from optimal. But I feel my absolute best when I'm eating very controlled, calories per meal type of deal. Very, small amounts until I'm satiated, which by the way is the big secret. So not to go down a rabbit hole, but, the carnivore, keto world in particular, the idea is you're kind of doing this intermittent fasting by default by eating amounts of food high in fat that are calorically dense, satiating foods so that when you're full, you don't eat anymore and then you don't have to eat until you're hungry. So I always call it the dirty little secret because let's just face it, that's the goal there is to consume less calories of quality calories and go longer times fasting, sort of just mimicking hunter-gatherers and doing, what's, ancestrally appropriate, which is to eat to live and not live to eat, which in today's culture, we really do live to eat. Now, a lot of people will talk about the psychology where we spend all this time thinking about our next meal, but guess what? That's totally evolutionarily appropriate to be thinking about your next meal, so that's okay. Culturally, what we do to, what's the word I'm looking for, commune and be part of a community and bond with one another is to, to congregate around mealtime. That's what we do, so that's fine, guys. Don't let anyone brainwash you into thinking that that's somehow not healthy. But what I want to say about this, about the whole incorporating carbs back in, which did kind of fix my ketogenic sensitivity, type of problems where I was, cold hands, cold feet. Yeah, I was really lean, but again, I was kind of pissing dust there and having a little hard time in the bathroom in terms of, again, that output and that urge or pressure, things that were kind of getting screwed up down there a little bit. And I was just discussing this. Half the video, the motivation for this video, I was just discussing this with a physician assistant the other day. We're talking about electrolyte depletion. We're talking about sodium following water, following glucose, that big relation of, retaining water. That's why a lot of people who do ketogenic eating and really low carb eating can actually be, very lean and they're not holding on to this excess water and salt in the body. So I was a byproduct of that. But yes, was I a little puffier? By eating, a certain amount of carbohydrates? Well, yeah, the ridiculously ripped, Brad Pitt, Fight Club, Brad Pitt, snatch, body that I had in 2019, the beginning of 2020. Yeah, I was really lean and then got a little bit puffier by incorporating carbs. But here's really what I want to end this video with. I now, in 2022, am eating much more ketogenic again, and I feel the best I've felt in quite some time. And if you've watched any of my material, it is because yes, in September with the second stick, I really did not do well. I have barely recovered from those, the lethargy and the absolute fatigue, almost saying the same thing there, and really not feeling good. And yes, my resting heart rate now is 80. It hasn't been that bad since the end of chiropractic school in 2019, when I was already, that would have been 2018 in the very beginning, like January 2018, I believe is when I started the ketogenic diet. Yeah. So we're talking 19, 20, 21, and the beginning of 22 here. So we're between like 4.5 years from like, Christmas time, just before that new year that I just referenced in 18, that I started eating keto. And, this is why I don't go down rabbit holes, because I lose my train of thought. But again, incorporating carbohydrates, and now I'm eating cleaner again. And I feel the best I felt in a while. And now within like maybe 2 weeks time, I'm going to make an updated video to see if I can get my resting heart rate back down to the 60s, because I've been running every morning, getting up earlier, been able to stay awake later with no blood sugar fluctuations. Again, this is all diet related. My inflammation is down. I'm feeling good. And really the key is I have been able now to not kind of give into the cravings once I have carbohydrates. So you see, the problem when you're so sensitive, but really insulin resistant, to carbohydrates, and to kind of have that kind of borderline, diabetic, pre-diabetic disposition that somebody like me who's really struggled with those types of symptoms for a very long time. I mean, since I was probably 16, 18 years old, really struggling with these symptoms, and have had many, episodes of various, health-related conditions that have all been fixed, all of them, by incorporating a better low carbohydrate diet, in my experience again. And it's really because of the addictive nature of the carbohydrates, of the sugar, the sweetness of these carbohydrate enriched foods, for the most part. Obviously, we're not talking about grains, but that's a whole other story. Because like when I do, grain free is when I can tell you indefinitely, so even if I'm eating some more carbohydrates, but cut out all the grains, no inflammation, no wrist pain, no finger pain, no shoulder pain, no pimples. You know what I mean? Actual, really feeling my best. So it's kind of like it boils down to discipline. It boils down to having self-control and actually knowing what is and what isn't good for you based on trial and error, elimination diets, things of this nature, and really to kind of be, the self-accountable. You're probably going to need a accountability buddy, okay, as well, because it is so easy. Like the addictive nature of these foods, it's so serious that, just having a little bit of honey, takes me down that slippery slope. Maybe I want a little like a oatmeal, natural, whatever, no palm oil, coffee infused pecan, little cookie cake thing. No matter how small it is. That is that gateway drug of choice in terms of carbohydrates, and going down that road of I can lose myself, and did from, even during the time I went on my run streak from June through September, whatever it was, going down, that road, that rabbit hole. Me and Jen were traveling a little bit at that time, and, we were eating whatever we wanted, drinking whatever we wanted, that kind of thing. And she's healthy. She doesn't respond to blood sugar fluctuations and hormonal imbalances realistically, maybe some thyroid issues, hypothalamic issues. There's a lot that goes into why people will struggle, not just with diet, but their health, as why the diet is so important to be able to heal you. Now, I've gone on for a while in this video, and I really hope all of it was relevant. I know I, blabbered on a little in little rabbit holeness, but I can't tell you how rewarding eating a ketogenic lifestyle has been for me over the last now 4 to 5 years. I do. I encourage people who resonate with the symptoms that I have just put out there, right? So everything about all the kind of symptoms that I've dealt with. Outside of back pain in my life, the only thing that's ever really been a problem has been this, ureter bladder type of thing. Used to have the irritable bowel, all the sensitivities, things we've just talked about. And ketogenic eating has pretty much eliminated all of that, but then without any carbohydrates. If I continue to allow carbohydrates to be vilified, I may have gotten even more, I'm not going to say even more sick, but a particular area where electrolytes, sodium, glucose is not electrolyte, but potassium, magnesium, these types of things that are needed to have to maybe eliminate some of the symptoms I was dealing with, they needed to be back into the diet, which is why if you do listen out there to Carnivore MD or Paul Saladino, this whole idea of animal-based with fruit and honey is a fantastic idea. The problem that I found was that certain fruits and honey have really started to instigate my metabolism, and with maybe a lack of self-control, that gateway would open up for me to kind of abuse it rather than really utilizing carbohydrates when I need it. But I think that too often keto is the one, ketogenic eating long-term is being vilified and how it can't be done or it's not sustainable long-term. And there is other areas to suggest or address, which is the physiologic insulin resistance that may happen through the elimination of all those carbohydrates or high amounts of protein, which nobody really needs that much protein unless you're a bodybuilder. Long term, and yes, as we age, we want to make sure we get adequate protein, and we want to make sure we're doing some resistance training so we don't fall and break a hip. I'm putting that disclaimer out there as well. But, really, we got to find out where we're going to get our fuel from. Is it going to be fat or is it going to be carbohydrate? I want you to think about that. There's plenty of other material out there that addresses this, but I'm just saying, think about that. Is fat or is carbohydrate? Amino acids, protein, building blocks, all that. Couldn't get a fuel source out of the residual protein, but it's not readily available the way the other two are. And, keto has been great for me. I have not found the detriment of eating it long term. If anything, I found a detriment of kind of going in and out of it and treating myself to things like apples or bananas or too much honey or having dessert or oatmeal, things that I'm really sensitive to in a negative way, and have impacted my life in more of a negative way than a positive way, to where I, kind of coined this thing a while back where I said optimally limiting. And it's not a bad thing if that's you, because it's me. And being optimally limiting has been the thing that has allowed me to feel my best over the last 4 to 5 years again. And I'm sticking to it, and I'm gonna ride this thing out for the next, 6 months. Who the fuck knows? I don't know why I just said that, 6 months. I mean, I don't plan on having any desserts anytime soon. I don't plan on having honey anytime soon. And I don't plan on, breaking the cycle of what I've been doing recently, which again is incorporating lots of vegetables, oils, butters, nuts, seeds, ones that don't make me break out, eggs, beef, things like that. You all know if I'm not a fan of chicken, if you didn't, but I'm not. And I've been talking way too long. It's Super Bowl Sunday. I've got a billion errands to run. And again, reflection, just sharing my honest, open video. I've had obviously more energy than I've had in the last, few weeks to be able to make these videos because the diet is back on track. And this one's not temporary. I'm putting this out there because this is not temporary. I'm kind of like, I gave in too much to people saying, about balance, but that balance can be a slippery slope to a place that somebody who has health risks like myself I can't. And I'm not going to put myself through that, and I'll know what symptoms to look out for moving forward, as should you. And I hope this video helped and provided some insight as to why ketogenic eating long-term is it's a viable option. Okay, I'm out of here, guys. Till next time, Dr. Perlman.